These countries were once friends with the US, but are now seen as its enemies. You will be shocked to know which country is at number 1 at the end of this video. At number 5, we have Iran. Back in the 1950s, US and Iran were actually very close. The US even helped Iran's king to stay in power. America supported him with weapons, oil deals, and intelligence. Iran was seen as a key American partner in the Middle East, but everything changed in 1979. A massive revolution erupted in Iran. People overthrew the Shah and replaced him with a new Islamic government that rejected American influence. That same year, Iranian students stormed the US embassy in Tehran and took 52 Americans hostage. Since then, Iran and the America have been on opposite sides, especially when it comes to nuclear weapons, military presence in the Middle East, and support for different groups. And today things are more tense than ever, and it feels like the two countries are on the edge of something very serious. At number 4, we have Cuba. In the early 1900s, Cuba and the US were like neighbors who got along really well. The US had a big influence on Cuban politics and economy. Tourists from Miami would fly into Havana, and American businesses were everywhere in Cuba. But that all changed in 1959. Fidel Castro came to power in a revolution that threw out the US-backed government. He turned Cuba into a communist state and quickly sided with the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Then came the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, when the world almost went to nuclear war. Since then, the US has placed heavy sanctions on Cuba, and while tensions have cooled slightly at times, the relationship remains icy. At number 3, we have Vietnam. During the Cold War, the US wanted to stop the spread of communism, especially in Asia. North Vietnam was communist and supported by the Soviet Union and China. South Vietnam was non-communist, so the US sent money, weapons, and soldiers to help defend it. This turned into a long and bloody conflict known as the Vietnam War. After years of intense fighting and heavy losses, the US decided to pull out of the war. In 1975, North Vietnam won and took over the South. The two sides merged into one country under a single communist government. For decades, Vietnam kept its distance from the US. Today, things have improved economically, but the wounds of the war still linger. At number 2, we have Russia. Believe it or not, the US and the Soviet Union were allies in World War II. They fought together to defeat the Nazi Germany, but right after the war, everything changed. The Cold War began, a long period of tension, spy games, and nuclear threats. Russia, which was the main part of the USSR and the US, became global rivals. Even after the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, relations stayed rocky. And today, with the war in Ukraine, cyber attacks, and new arms races, US-Russia tensions are at some of their worst levels since the Cold War. And finally, at number 1 is the country which was once America's big trade partner and a quiet ally, but today stands as America's biggest global challenger. It's none other than China. Back in the 1970s, the US helped China open up to the world. Trade agreements were signed and relations warmed. China joined the global economy and grew fast. But now the story has flipped. The US accuses China of spying, building military, and unfair trade practices. Tensions in the South China Sea over Taiwan and in global tech markets have made China one of America's biggest competitors, and it is showing no signs of slowing down. China is investing heavily in its military, technology, and global influence. Some experts believe that if the trend continues, China could challenge and possibly overtake America to become the world's next superpower. So this video teaches us one important lesson, that in global politics, there are no true friends. Today's friends could be bitter enemies in the future. So which friendly country do you think might become the next enemy of USA?